Aloha and good morning. Welcome to the House Committee on Economic Development, Tuesday, February 9th at 10 a.m. Professional testifiers, please do stand on your testimony if possible. And let's get started. First up, we have HB 2325. We have DOTAX with comments.
Chair, this is Isaac from DOTAX. We stand on our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Tax Foundation with comments.
Thank you, Chair. Members, Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. We will stand on our written comments.
Thank you very much, Tom. Members, questions? Seeing none, moving on. HB 1490 relating to taxation. First up, we have DOTAX in support.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to note that we do have a nuclear option, which is a criminal penalty under 231.35. We just wanted something lesser than a criminal penalty for not supplying information. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. Next up, we have Tax Foundation with comments. Tom.
Thank you, Chair. Members, Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. In our view, failing to cooperate with the tax authorities carries hefty consequences even without any additional penalty. There's also some concern that typically in an audit there is multiple rounds of information requested, and if you have a taxpayer who can't respond for some reason, this penalty may rack up really quickly. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. Members, questions? Seeing none, moving on. HB 1491. First up, we have DOTAX in support.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'd like to note that we made a boo-boo on the bill. We inadvertently deleted lines 1, 2, and 3 on page 2. If you could restore that, we would appreciate it. That's page 2, lines 1, 2, and 3. We inadvertently deleted those lines. Thank you, Chair.
Next up, we have Tax Foundation with comments.
Thank you, Chair. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation will stand on our written comments.
Thank you very much. Members, questions? Seeing none, moving on to HB 1492. Wow, these bills all got filed at the exact same time, huh? First up, we have DOTAX in support.
Yep, stand on our written comments, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Tax Foundation with comments.
Thank you, Chair. We'll stand on our written comments. Our comments are the same as 1490.
Thanks very much. Members, questions? Seeing none, moving on. HB 1493. First up, we have DOTAX in support.
Thank you, Chair. This is just a ceiling increase for a special administration fund that made $31 million last year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Tax Foundation with comments.
Thank you, Chair. We did submit written comments. We do note that last year the fund was determined to be $15 million in excess of its requirements, and it was rated. We think this fund is out of control and should be given back to the appropriation process.
Thank you very much. Members, questions? Seeing none, moving on. Next up, we have HB 1507. First up, we have DOTAX with comments.
Thank you, Chair. This is DOTAX. We stand on our written comments.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Hawaii Children's Action Network. Nicole Wu, are you with us today?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair. I would like to point you towards our written testimony in support of this bill. It would improve the earned income tax credit in the state, which the legislature wisely passed in 2017. It provides much needed money to families with children who are low to moderate income. It had a 5-year sunset, so we definitely need it to be made permanent, which this bill does. And it also makes this credit refundable, which means the lowest income families can get the full amount of their credit. Currently, the way the EITC is here in Hawaii, the lowest income families generally can only get a small amount of their credit, not the full amount. So we should join the majority of other states and the federal EITC in making our credit refundable. And that's what this bill would do. And an interesting part of this bill is that it pays for this permanent increase in the EITC by raising the capital gains tax. And in our testimony, we talk about how this really is well targeted at those at the top. The very wealthiest people here in Hawaii, according to the Hawaii Department of Taxation, are those who benefit from the capital gains tax loophole. So we would be just asking those who can afford to pay the same rate on their taxes, on their capital gains, as those who work for a living. And so I have some small changes to the language suggested just to make it so that capital gains taxes would be treated like income from work. So thank you for listening, and I hope you'll pass this bill. It will be good for Hawaii's families with children. Thank you.
Very much. Next up, we have Trevor Abarzua with Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Trevor Abarzua, Chamber of Commerce, Hawaii. The Chamber supports certain portions of HB 1507. We do support making the earned income tax credit refundable and permanent, and I echo Nicole's statements on that portion. But we do have concerns on the increasing of the capital gains tax. A lot of our small businesses, our startup community here relies on investment and investors to come in and invest in business. And by increasing capital gains tax, it dissuades that happening in our state, and investors from around the world, around the country, might go to other states and other entrepreneurial communities. So we, again, support certain parts. We believe that HB 2406, which is also slated in this committee, is a better vehicle for this policy, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Next up, we have Will Karen in support.
Aloha, Chair, committee members. Thank you for hearing this bill. I strongly support this bill. I think it's the poster child for tax fairness. The EITC components are really important for helping families. I think we're all in agreement with that. As far as the capital gains portion, we're just asking for people who make income off of investments to pay the same rate as folks who make income with their, sweat and labor. That's really all we're asking for. It's not a huge change. And if you look at, a graph of the rate of real investment over time compared to the total capital gains rates over time, you can see there's really no relationship between the two. Investment continues to rise, even when the capital gains rate was as high as almost 40% in the 70s. Warren Buffett was quoted in I believe it was a CNN article in 2011 saying the same thing, that he's never seen people shy away from investments when they know there's going to be a good return on it, no matter how high the rate is. So there's really no relationship there. I think it's a fair ask to have the capital gains rate be the same as regular income tax rate. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Members, questions?
Chair, Tax Foundation, we have submitted testimony as well.
I'm sorry, I completely skipped you. Tom, please go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members, Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We did submit extensive written testimony. We think that the bill as drafted does not accomplish what the testifiers want it to accomplish in terms of raising the capital gains rate to be the same as regular income. And we've drafted a technical fix for the committee's consideration instead. On the policy matters, we would rather see that the tax rate brackets on the lower end be lopped off. There really is no reason that we as the state of Hawaii should be taxing under our income tax people who are earning below the poverty line, but that's what we're doing because the tax brackets are so old, and we think that would be a better solution than making credits and more credits that people get confused over and may not claim, even though they're entitled to it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we will have members' questions.
Chair
Onishi, please.
Yes, for DOTAX.
Yes, thank you. I submitted written testimony too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, please go ahead, Director.
Okay, so all very, very important. We just, on our second paragraph, last sentence, it's an easier way of accomplishing your policy to tax income, capital gains at the ordinary income tax rates. You can just repeal the capital gains section, 235.51F. That's it's a simpler way of doing what you guys want to do. That's my testimony. Now,
Okay.
Representative Onishi, I'll be more than glad to entertain your question.
So Director Choi, in your testimony submitted, are you saying that the capital gains would be taxed twice?
Yeah, so right now it's included in ordinary in income, right? And a capital gains portion rate is taxed. So if you just take away the capital gains portion, then the all income will be taxed at ordinary income rates. Just an easier fix, that's all. If that's what you folks want to do.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Members, any further questions? Seeing none, we will not be moving on, but rather moving back because I skipped a bill. HB 1494. First up, we have tax in support.
Yeah, stand on my written comments, please.
Thanks very much. Next up, we have Tax Foundation with comments.
Thank you, Chair, members, Tax Foundation of Hawaii. In our view, the added powers given to the special enforcement section are no different from those, the powers of the department generally. We suggest that this is not necessary. The department is the dog and the special enforcement section is the tail. It shouldn't be looked at as the other way around.
Thank you very much. Members, questions? Seeing none, moving on to HB 1569. First up, we have tax with comments.
We stand on our written testimony, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Hawaii Children's Action Network speaks.
Aloha, this is Nicole from Hawaii Children's Action Network speaks again. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members. We support this bill. This is about the food excise tax credit, which the legislature started, and it's gone through a few versions over the years, but it's intended to help families who are really hard hit by RGET. If you look at how much of their income people at different income levels spend on the GET, those at the lowest, those who make less than $20,000, those families are paying more than 10% of their income in GET, while those in the top 10% making more than $400,000, they only pay 1.2% in GET. So this is a really regressive tax. It really burdens those who can't afford it. So the food excise tax credit is intended to help get some of that money back to families that are going to just spend it at local businesses as soon as they get it. We're also one of very few states that are taxing groceries. So this is a way to kind of help get us, again, to help those families who have to spend money on food and should get some relief on those taxes. This bill would increase the eligibility limit for families to get it. The last time the income eligibility limit was set was in 2015 at $50,000 for families and $30,000 for single filers. So over the last few years, fewer and fewer taxpayers have qualified because of inflation. So this bill increases the limits to $80,000 and $50,000 for single filers. We suggest some other improvements. One is to also increase the amount of the credit. It's a tiered credit based on how much money you make. Again, it needs to be increased for inflation because it hasn't moved since 2015 by about 18%. And then we also suggest adding automatic inflation adjustments in the future every year so that we don't have to go through this every few years. And so families can continue to get this credit steadily every year. It's a great help to families with children in our state. So we urge you to pass this bill with some of these amendments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Tax Foundation with comments.
Thank you, Chair and members. Tom Yamachika with Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We wanted to point out that we have several disparate programs and tax credits aimed at poverty relief. We have the food excise credits, low-income household renters credit, earned income tax credit, dependent care expenses necessary for gainful employment credit, and so on and so on. The credits have non-duplication provisions and all have strict time limits on when they may be claimed upon pain of credit forfeiture. This is a very complex system. I urge lawmakers to consider simplification of the system as it now exists. so that people can understand what to do and how to do it. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Will Karen in support.
Thank you, Chair, members. Will Carone testifying as an individual. I just want to echo everything that Nicole Wu said in her testimony. This credit's an important way to get a little bit of help back to working families that need some relief. I would agree with the amendments proposed by HCAN as well. I think that in addition to the income threshold being moved up, it makes sense to move the credit amount up. We know that inflation is going to keep happening. We know that people are still going to need this credit. So in addition to that, I think it also makes sense to include automatic adjustments. So mahalo.
Thank you very much. Members, questions? Seeing none, moving on to HB 1709. First up, we have no tax with comments.
Chair, we stand on our written testimony.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Tax Foundation with comments.
Thank you, Chair and members. Tom Yamachika with Tax Foundation. We will stand on written comments.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have William Kirk in support. Oh, sorry, William is not here today. Members, do you have any questions? Seeing none, moving on to HB 1926. First up, we have no tax in opposition.
Yes, Chair, this is a bill that I think should be held. The federal trade zone is not a tax-free zone. And in my belief, I think that they should have known in 1984 that the only taxes that they are exempting in the trade zone are ad valorem taxes, not GE taxes. So this is not, as the preamble states, that it was some kind of sneak attack. Good tax practitioners should have known this. So we stand on our testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have DBED with comments.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Chung Chang, Deputy Director for DBED. We stand on our testimony providing comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have PAR Hawaii in support. Not here. Okay. Next up, we have Hawaii Gas in support.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Jill Yenker with Hawaii Gas in support of HB 1926. We stand on our written testimony.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Chamber of Commerce in support.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Trevor Abazua, Chamber of Commerce, Hawaii. We stand on a written testimony in support and happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Ancon Marine in support.
Good morning, Chair and Vice Chair and House Committee. My name is Mark Kramer representing Ancon Marine, and I stand by my written testimony.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Tax Foundation with comments.
Thank you, Chair and members. Tom Yamachika with Tax Foundation. Apparently, the problem here is that businesses were either led or misled from department guidance to take certain return positions. The department's rulings happened to be wrong. And then when the department figured out that there was a mistake, they said, oh, okay, well, I guess we made a mistake. Let's go back and assess all impacted taxpayers for back taxes, penalties, and interest. We think there's a problem with that. And we do think that it's appropriate for the legislature to step in and run interference between the taxpayers here and an obviously hungry Department of Taxation, as reflected in the previous testimony. Thank you. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Tom. Next up, we have Metropolitan Painting and Environmental Systems, Inc. in support.
Morning. My name is Geraldine Lee, Metropolitan Painting. I'm House Bill 1926 for the reason of the economical impact that it would take upon hundreds of local contractors that perform services in the foreign trade zone, and we strongly oppose and have opinions about how everything went out. As far as I'm concerned, I was given no notice or warning of the change in the tax exemptions, and was not given the opportunity to have some input and to express the consequences of that. And I stand by my written testimony as well. We seek your support on this House bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, questions? Seeing none, moving on to HB 2226. First up, we have no tax with comments.
I'll stand on our written testimony, Chair.
Very much. Next, we have Oceanit in support.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Judy Morris from Oceanit. We strongly support this bill and we stand on written testimony.
Thank you very much. Next, we have HCDC in support.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Len Higashi, Hawaii Technology Development Corporation. We submitted testimony in support of this bill with a requested amendment. The amendment is to make the certifications subject to date stamp as opposed to date and time stamp. And the purpose is to prevent, on the first day of an online application, there's a logjam coming in the first minute. It's very, we feel like it would force applicants to rush and submit and could potentially have, harm the potential applicants. So appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Tax Foundation with comments.
Thank you, Chair and members. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. We're concerned about the term business entities with common ownership structures and urge that be more specifically defined. And we also were a little bit confused, or at least I was, regarding allocation of the $15 million citywide credit. And I'm just wondering if DBED finds those provisions administrable, because I couldn't really figure out what that, what was, what people were getting after by the provisions that are in the statute as written.
Thank you very much. Members, questions? Seeing none, moving on. HB 2406. First, we have no tax with comments.
Chair, we stand on our written comments.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Hawaii Children's Action Network in support.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. It's Nicole Wu from HCAN Speaks again. We support this bill like we did HB 1507. This bill would make the earned income tax credit here in Hawaii permanent and refundable, which again, we need to do because it's about to expire. And just a couple of other points for why the EITC is so important. One is that it does push back against economic disparities between racial groups here in Hawaii. Basically, right now, Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders are getting more in the EITC than the average amount for the state. And if the EITC were made refundable, they would get an even bigger boost than anybody else. So it's a small way to address some of the racial economic disparities in our state. And just to emphasize again, 31 states and the federal government have EITCs right now. It's a proven anti-poverty program, but we're one of only 5 states that don't have the refundability aspect that allows lower income families to get the full amount. So making it refundable as this bill would is a really great thing for Hawaii's families with children. So we urge you to pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Chamber of Commerce in support.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Again, Trevor Abrazoa, Chamber of Commerce, Hawaii. We do stand in support of HB 2406 and believe it is a better vehicle for this policy compared to HB 1507. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Next up, we have Tax Foundation with comments.
Thank you, Chair and members. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. We've submitted written testimony. Our comments are basically the same as 1507.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Will Karen in support.
Thank you, Chair. Members, Will Crone testifying as an individual in strong support of this bill. It's basically the same as my testimony from 1507 as well. This is an important policy for working families. For every dollar distributed in the EITC, the economy sees $1.24 put back into it. So this is a great way to boost the economy as well. And I hope that the committee will pass it forward. Mahalo.
Thanks very much. Members, questions? Seeing none, moving on to the last bill on our agenda, HB 2175. First up, we have Doe tax in support.
Thank you, Chair. We stand on our written comments.
Thanks very much. Next, we have Tax Foundation comments.
Thank you, Chair and members. Tom Yamachika with Tax Foundation will stand on written comments.
Thanks very much. Members, questions? Seeing none, we will recess for the end. Back to decision making for our Wednesday 10 a.m. agenda. first bill is HB 2325. You know, members, I think this bill is actually a really interesting idea. I think maybe one day we will do things like this, but I think right now it's a little bit difficult to administer. So I'm going to defer this measure. Next up, we have HB 1490. I would like to pass this measure as is. Members, questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
House Bill 1490, Chair's recommendation to pass as is. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Bellotti.
I think you have to turn on your microphone.
Aye.
Thank you. Representative Kobayashi.
Aye.
Representative Onishi.
Aye.
Representative Sayama.
Aye.
Representative Takayama.
Aye.
Representative Okimoto.
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, members. Next up, we have HB 1491 relating to the cigarette tax and tobacco tax law. I would like to take Doe taxes amendments. That is page 2, lines 1, 2, and 3. Members, questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
House Bill 1491, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments in the presence of members. Do we have any reservations? Do we have any no votes? Seeing
No
none-
for Kobayashi.
No for Kobayashi. All others voting aye. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, members. Next up, we have HB 1492 relating to taxation. This is the civil penalty for failure to respond to Doe tax. I would like to make some technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
House Bill 1492, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments, noting the presence of all members. Do we have any reservations? Any no votes? Nope, seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next up, we have HB 1493 relating to the Tax Administration Special Fund. Members, I would like to pass this measure as is. Questions, comments, concerns? Rep. Kobayashi.
Really again, the same comments for me on special funds that it's really an odd thing for me coming from the private sector that you set up a fund and put a bunch of money in there just in case. And in this case, it's really questionable why we would do this instead of just putting the general fund. I'm a no vote on this.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rep. Kobayashi. Members, any further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
House Bill 1493, Chair's recommendation to pass as is. Noting the no vote, Representative Kobayashi, do you have any further reservations? Reservations for Okimoto? Any further no votes? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, members. Next up, we have HB 1494 relating to the Special Enforcement Section. Members, I would like to pass this measure as is. Questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
House Bill 1494, Chair's recommendation to pass as is, noting the presence of all members. Do we have any reservations? Have any no votes? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, members. Next up, we have HB 1507 relating to tax fairness, capital gains, and the state EITC refundable and permanent. Members, I would like to pass this measure as is. Questions, comments, concerns? Rep. Kobayashi.
Just some comments in support that we're even having a conversation about whether we should be taxing people who make money shoving assets around the same as people who go to work for a living. It's just really surreal to me that this is pretty much a no-brainer. I'm fully supportive of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for those excellent comments, Rep. Kobayashi.
Chair?
Chair Onishi.
Yes, on this bill, I have reservations on it in regards to the double taxation of capital gains and also the fact that the earned income tax credit is part of the majority caucus omnibus bill, HB 2510. So I'll be voting with reservation.
Understood. And Yes, there's a bit of duplication this year for some of these efforts, and I just ask that all the members and the public bear with us as we try and figure out how best to help our working families. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair. As is.
House Bill 1507, Chair's recommendation to pass as is. Note in the presence for all members and the reservations for Representative Onishi. Do we have any further reservations? Any no votes?
No vote.
No vote for Okimoto. All others voting aye, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Members, next up, we have HB 1569 relating to the refundable food excise tax credit. Members, I would just like to make one small amendment to blank out the thresholds. Questions, comments, concerns?
Chair.
Yes, Chair Onishi.
This is also included in the House Majority Package Omnibus Bill, so I'll be voting with reservation.
Understood. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
House Bill 1569, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments. Note in the presence of all members and reservations from Representative Onishi. Do you have any further reservations? Do we have any no votes? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, members. Next up, we have HB 1709, the income tax credit for a whole house water filter system. It's an interesting measure, and I'd like to keep the conversation going, basically because of what's happening at Red Hill. Members, and sorry, we do need to make some technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
House Bill 1709, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments. Note in the presence of all members, do we have any reservations?
Reservation.
Reservations for Onishi? Do we have any no votes? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, members. Next up, we have HB 1926, which retroactively restores the foreign trade zones exemption. Members, at this time, I'm inclined to defer this measure. Questions, comments, concerns? Thank you. Actually, wait, I don't ask for questions when I defer. Sorry. I'm on autopilot today. Okay, next up, we have HB 2226 relating to the tax credit for research activities. Members, I would like to take HTDC's amendments, striking out the word time to have it be only date, and then adding, there were a couple other words in that paragraph that are in HTDC's testimony. Members, questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
House Bill 2226, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments. Note in the presence of all members, do we have any reservations? Any no votes? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, members. Next up, we have HB 2406, which again makes the state earned income tax credit refundable and permanent. I think we're seeing a theme here today. Chair Onishi, questions, comments, concerns?
Reservation.
Thank you very much. Members, any further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
As is.
I'm sorry, as is, yes.
HB 2406, Chair's recommendation to pass as is. Not in the presence of all members. We have reservations from Representative Onishi. Do you have any further reservations? Reservations for Okimoto. Any no votes? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Hey, thanks very much, members. Last bill on the agenda, HB 2175, relating to conformity to the Internal Revenue Code. Members, I would like to pass this measure as is. Questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
Chair's recommendation to pass HB 2175 as is, not in the presence of all members. Do we have any reservations? Any no votes? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, members. We are adjourned.